Chapter 201, Vibranium's Weakness. After steadying himself, Noah looked down at his upper body. The Source Project armor that had covered him was gone, exposing a muscular, well-defined torso with a faint green life energy rippling across his skin. He wasn't completely naked. The lower half of the armor, from his waist down, remained intact. Only the upper body and helmet, the sections hit by the energy impact, had vanished. "What is this?" Noah murmured, pressing his chest. The power of the Resolve rune flowed through him. The moment the Source Project armor dissipated, the Resolve rune had activated, strengthening his body and cushioning the force of the blow. Only then did Noah realize why the armor had evaporated. Vibranium, despite its miraculous ability to absorb kinetic energy and stand among the hardest metals in the universe, had limits. It had weaknesses. In his previous life, Noah had once researched vibranium and remembered there were several varieties. The type he'd mined from the seabed, the same as the metal under Wakanda, was commonly called Wakandan vibranium. He also vaguely recalled a kind of Antarctic vibranium that could emit shock waves to turn regular vibranium into a liquid-like state. He'd even dispatched nanobots to the Antarctic to look for it, though he hadn't yet gotten confirmation. More importantly, vibranium was vulnerable to high-frequency vibrations, a principle similar to how Antarctic vibranium countered Wakandan vibranium. Strong vibration waves could strip vibranium of its unique properties and temporarily reduce it to ordinary metal. Shuri's work in Wakanda had revealed this, enabling them to handle vibranium more safely. But the conditions to trigger such an effect were extreme. Only minds like Shuri's or Tony's could craft a sonic stabilizer capable of producing the necessary frequencies. Noah now understood what had happened. The impact from the convergence of the two Infinity Stones had struck his chest. The energies, pulled by two wills, collided within the merged blast and produced high-frequency vibrations that disintegrated the pure vibranium of his upper armor. The force of the impact had also exceeded vibranium's absorption threshold. Nanomaterials stored in his belt began spreading across his torso to repair the damaged plating, but Noah stopped them. He pressed the button in the center of his belt. The repair halted. The nanomaterials drew back, flowed into the belt's storage core, and the armor retracted into the device. He was left only in his everyday clothes. "I still have to fight my own fight," Noah said, raising his left hand toward the tesseract that hovered beside him. The cube's power was immense, but he couldn't wield the Infinity Stones with full mastery, not without extreme measures like Corvus Glaives, letting the stone's energies invade and corrode the body. Noah refused to become a slave to such power. Corvus already showed signs of that corruption in both body and mind. Noah kept the tesseract close by and let it orbit him like a contained generator. It could act as a battlefield barrier to prevent their clash from devastating the city below. Corvus, at a distance, had recovered from the impact too. His form had almost completely transmuted into energy. His cloak flowed as yellow fire-like energy over his still partially physical torso and head. He clenched the Mind Stone in his hand, a feral grin splitting his face. He studied the changes in himself, not with fear but delight. When Corvus saw Noah with his armor gone, his yellow glowing eyes widened and he shouted across the ruined skyline. "So you finally took off that turtle shell. Ha ha! Didn't expect this, did you? I can control this power, the Mind Stone. Infinite power." He laughed like a madman, his mouth stretched into a grotesque grin. Corvus had originally planned only to draw Noah's attention and then slip away, but the Mind Stone's corruption had altered his aim. He no longer wanted to flee. He wanted to kill Noah, take another Infinity Stone, and seize ultimate power. Thanos became a distant consideration. Without warning, Corvus's body blurred and dematerialized. Not true invisibility, but an ultra-high-speed charge that left a fading afterimage. In an instant, he reappeared at Noah's side, swinging a golden battle blade suffused with Mind Stone energy, and brought it down toward him. The blade smashed into Noah's raised arm with an explosive clang. It didn't sever the limb as Corvus had hoped. Noah's arm, corded and powerful, glowed faintly with green energy. At the point of impact, a thin layer of bone-like armor had formed over the skin, bone plating, absorbing the blow. Corvus stared back at him, his yellow energy pupils meeting Noah's steady gaze. Noah's eyes burned green with resolve as he held the strike, the strange armor on his arm gleaming where the blade met bone. Chapter 202, Deliberate. Boom, boom, boom. The resolve rune pulsed in time with Noah's heartbeat, and a surge of life energy erupted from it, sweeping through his body. Magic flowed through him so forcefully that his clothes and black hair fluttered as if in a gale. The light in his eyes burned like coals. Corvus Glaive's ferocious expression flickered. He felt an overwhelming force radiating from Noah, stronger than when Noah had used the Tesseract, and for the first time his arrogance drained away. He retracted the golden warblade and began to regroup, planning to strike again. Noah wouldn't let him get away. In a motion too fast for Corvus to follow, a powerful hand closed around the long hilt. Rune magic crawling over Noah's skin insulated him from the Mind Stone's burning power on the blade. Corvus planted both feet and heaved, teeth gritted, trying to pull his weapon free, but it was as if the hilt had been welded to the air. No matter how hard he strained, the warblade didn't budge. Noah grinned. A well of magic escaped between his teeth. He tightened his grip on the weapon and sensed Corvus preparing to abandon the blade and flee, but Noah wouldn't give him the chance. The Tesseract behind him shivered, and a spatial field snapped tight around Corvus, freezing him in place. As the Mind Stone's fury clashed with the Tesseract's hold, Noah raised his right arm. Corvus's eyes went wide with fresh terror. The green runes along Noah's body flared and shifted into fierce golden flames. Noah's hair bristled, charged with energy. His fist clenched until the air itself creaked and strained, like cloth pulled taut. The converging power drew in the surrounding air, whipping up a howling wind that made the Mind Stone's flames around Corvus dance and sputter. Unleashed impact. When the force finished gathering, Noah swung. Golden fire roared from his fist and condensed into the snarling head of a dragon, which smashed into Corvus's face like a living battering ram. Corvus stared into that tooth-studded maw and, for the first time amid his frenzy, saw death bearing down on him. The terror crystallized, his scattered arrogance snapped into a single, horrible clarity. Corvus threw every scrap of Mind Stone power at his defense. The collision hit him across the face with brutal finality. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Sound died, wind stilled, even people's breathing seemed to quiet. Then a blinding light erupted from Noah's fist, bright as a second sun, racing outward and swallowing the sky. It was almost impossible to look at as it spread at impossible speed, bathing everything in white. A roar followed like a mountain collapsing. The shockwaves slammed into the city, buildings shuddered, and people were sent sprawling. Debris clawed through the air. Many had already evacuated. Those who remained dove for cover. Nick Fury crouched behind a car, one hand over his head, staring up in disbelief. In his mind, there was only one thing that made that kind of light and concussion: a nuclear blast. Had resolved meant detonating that in the air? If so, the fallout would rain down on the city, New York reduced to a dead zone. Thor and Iron Man, both knocked unconscious earlier, came to in a strange blue mist. Outside the mist, winds and dust howled. Inside it was unnaturally quiet and calm, as though they'd been wrapped in a pocket of peace amid the storm. As the sun-bright light faded, Noah still hung in the air with his fist extended. Corvus Glaive was gone. Everything of him, save the half of his golden warblade, now clutched in Noah's other hand. Noah's full-power punch had seemed to tear Corvus apart. The immense energy left in its wake heated the air and drove it upward. Under gravity, hot air and dust gathered into a rising column that swelled into a mushroom cloud. The punch's residual force formed a backward blast that had already pushed clouds aside for miles. In New York, the sky was suddenly cleared, and people in nearby cities could see the heavens split as well. Noah floated, his hair cooling from its brief golden flare back to black, but still fluttering as if stirred by unseen winds. The resolve rune's power lingered around him. A single casual gesture would still make the sky groan. He slid the remaining half of the warblade into his system backpack, then lifted a hand and clenched it. Immense magical energy swirled in his palm like a vortex. The space around him groaned as though it might shatter. He released the tension and drew a thin thread of space stone energy to stitch the cracked fabric of the air back together. He had almost unsealed the resolve rune before. This was the first time he'd let its full power loose. The World Rune, of which the Resolve Rune was a part, lived up to its name. Now, with a hand raise or a stomp, he could cause effects that rivaled the undoing of worlds. Noah scanned the area. Corvus Glaive hadn't disappeared without a trace. Noah felt it in his bones. He also noticed the Mind Stone was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 203, Sneak Attack? Noah hovered in midair, black hair whipping, eyes blazing with vibrant life energy. A vast cloak of magical light wrapped him, giving him an almost demonic godlike presence. The sky above New York churned with chaotic interwoven forces, forming a warped energy field. The world could clearly sense something happening over the city, but when they tried to use satellites and other surveillance, the sky above New York seemed shrouded in a strange field that blocked all reconnaissance. The purple teleportation gate still hung in the air. Cast by two potent space energies, it remained unnaturally stable. Unless someone attacked it directly, it could persist indefinitely. Beneath it, the Chitauri craft Corvus Glaive had left behind floated intact. Even though the Mind Stone had clouded Corvus Glaive's mind, he had not abandoned his partner, Proxima Midnight. She had just regained consciousness, only to be knocked out again by the shock of the battle. The ship's surround of Mind Stone energy continued to protect her. Noah, however, couldn't find Corvus Glaive. He scanned the surrounding space, releasing a burst of magic that probed the chaotic field, but there was no trace of the warrior. Logically, without the Space Stone, Corvus shouldn't be able to teleport, and there were no teleportation signatures to be found. Noah frowned, puzzled. Suddenly, the energy around Noah trembled on its own, interrupting his thoughts. He realized where Corvus Glaive had gone. Noah clenched his fists and slammed his arms outward. Magic gathered in his movements, then erupted, sweeping through the warped energy field. Yellow energy shuddered free from the chaos and condensed into a humanoid form mid-air. That was the dispersed Corvus Glaive. The Mind Stone had fully transformed Corvus's original body into energy. Rather than perish, he had become a distributed, conscious energy presence. Each fragment was part of him, and from this hidden state he planned an ambush. Under Corvus's will, the Mind Stone's subtle magic crept toward Noah's mind, searching for an entry to seize his thoughts. But when the energy brushed Noah's head, it hit an unexpected barrier, a clear, ringing sound like a bell. Corvus paused, confused. On the other side, Noah's face registered recognition. He brought both hands down with a double pounding motion. The impact sent a shock through the field that eroded Corvus's energy fragments, forcing him to cohere back into a single form before he could be annihilated. Corvus reappeared, fully energy-born, his body humming. Noah had been searching for him, and the attempted intrusion revealed Corvus's location. The Mind Stone's power was insidious and unpredictable, and Noah would have been vulnerable, except he'd already been affected by the Mind Stone earlier. He'd placed Michael's blessing in his equipment bar and kept the little bell's effect active. When Corvus tried to worm into his mind, Michael's blessing automatically triggered, preventing the takeover and alerting Noah to Corvus's presence. Impossible! Why aren't you controlled? Corvus roared. His energy flared wildly. You don't need to know that much. Hand over the Mind Stone, Noah replied, calm and amplified by magic, the sound of his voice like a tolling bell. The stone is mine, Corvus snapped, and rage overtook him. As an energy entity, his attacks had changed. His former weapon now existed as an energy extension of his arm, and he assaulted Noah like a specter, decomposing, reforming, striking from multiple directions. Noah only stood with his arms crossed, watching as Corvus lunged and lashed out. Each time an attack struck him, a green shield bloomed where it hit. Whether Corvus unleashed raw energy or manifested his golden battle blade for physical strikes, nothing penetrated Noah's defense. Frustrated, Corvus dispersed again, this time consolidating into a visible yellow energy sea that swallowed the sky. The mass rolled like a tsunami toward Noah. Noah finally opened his arms. The phantom of the Resolve rune flashed behind him, and from his hands poured a profound, boundless green magic, deeper and more immense than the yellow ocean before him. The two vast magics occupied the heavens and collided. Endless green power surged from Noah, and it enveloped and consumed Corvus's yellow tide with ease. Corvus's access to the Infinity Stone's might was fragmentary. He couldn't channel it fully. Noah, by contrast, could marshal 99% of the Resolve rune's power, a difference that, while numerically small, was a gulf in effect. The green force crushed the Mind Stone's influence and then tightened like a vice. Noah made a grabbing motion. Rune magic coalesced around the yellow energy, constricting it until a humanoid figure reformed before him, choking as Noah's hand closed on his throat. Corvus struggled, every part of him writhing, but Noah's arm was as hard as diamond. No matter how he writhed, Corvus couldn't break free. The Resolve rune's enhancement had reached a terrifying peak. Noah had never felt such raw strength, greater even than when he had once transformed into Tom Kench, and the rune's power kept pouring in, making him only stronger. Corvus Glaive thrashed violently, trying to wrench himself free from the hand clamped around his throat. He slashed again and again with his energy-bladed glaive, but each strike was deflected by the magic coiling over Noah's arm. The Mind Stone's power on Corvus scorched that arm continuously, yet the green magic wrapped around Noah's limb matched the Infinity Stone energy surprisingly well. Indeed, it seemed to be swallowing the Mind Stone's power. Noah flicked his left hand, and a blade of energy sliced the air. The arm holding Corvus's weapon snapped off with a clean sound. No blood spilled where it met the shoulder. Corvus had long since shifted from flesh to pure energy. The severed limb had been the one that had been clutching the Mind Stone. Noah had cut it away to retrieve the gem. The arm floated a moment, then dissipated as soon as it lost its energy source. When the light cleared, there was no sign of the Mind Stone. Nothing remained where the arm had been. Noah frowned. If there wasn't a stone in his hand, where had it gone? He studied Corvus again. The choked figure writhed in his grip, but Noah felt no meaningful pressure. Holding him was effortless. Corvus's entire form, body, and clothes was now an energy construct, yet Noah could not detect the Mind Stone anywhere. Had Corvus absorbed it into himself? He probed. Noah raised the fingers of his left hand, calling up a thin, probing magic, and pushed his palm into the burst of energy that was Corvus's chest. He searched carefully, but found no concentrated core, no embedded gem. Perplexed, he withdrew, let the probing magic fade, and readied another approach. Noah's right hand tightened at the throat. The energy form Corvus was immune to blunt force, but the magical coating on Noah's hand gave him a firm grip. The Resolve rune inside Noah pulsed. He tapped it, letting its power run up his arm. The motion slowed Corvus's thrashing. His movements grew sluggish. His inner light dimmed. Corvus realized with a cold clarity that his energy was being drained. Along Noah's runged arm, yellow tendrils of force streamed into his palm, converted to a purer fuel, then siphoned into his chest. Noah had used this ability before, Grasp of Immortality, an active function of the Resolve rune. It could draw life force from a target to strengthen himself. A light drain would weaken foes, a heavy one could reduce them to ash. He had even experimented with mundane energies, electricity for instance, but those never gave lasting benefit. The difference now was that Corvus wasn't ordinary energy. He was built from the raw, potent power of the Infinity Stones. Noah opened the grasp and let it run. Energy surged from Corvus into him, filling him. His body grew steadier. The change wasn't as dramatic as months of cultivation had made him, but something deeper shifted as well. His soul energy felt fuller, more robust. Corvus felt it. As his reserves bled away, his struggles grew frantic, then feebler. Around him, energy phantoms flickered, faces of rage, fear, resignation, projections of his inner thoughts. Noah watched them, intrigued at their shifting expressions. Then Corvus himself changed. The dimming light in his energy form halted and reversed. A blinding brilliance surged through him, like a flare igniting. Noah's eyes narrowed. Too late. The burst came. Corvus detonated in a cascade of light. The shock threw Noah's arm up to shield his face. The blast didn't maim him, but it gave Corvus the chance he needed. The energy that had been his body dissolved into a diffuse cloud and surged outward. Noah lashed out with his palm, setting off controlled detonations through the dispersing field, but the cloud thinned and did not coalesce where he struck. It was as if Corvus had abandoned that particular store of energy. It was no longer bound to him. While Noah continued to search with repeated bursts, the cloud reformed elsewhere. Streaks of light converged near the Chitauri ship and reassembled into a body. When Corvus reappeared, he carried much less energy than before. The manic gleam was gone from his eyes, and the surrounding phantoms had vanished with the explosion. He stood diminished, but alive. Chapter 205, Awake. Chase Corvus Glaive had lost much of the aura that had once made him terrifying. The wild frenzy the Mind Stone had driven him into had faded, his sanity had returned. His self-detonation had freed him from Noah's grasp, but it had left his once potent energy body diminished. The yellow flame that had burned around him had all but gone out. He floated beside the Chitauri craft and looked down at Proxima Midnight, unconscious but alive. Relief washed over him. Had he still been in that frenzy, and had he harmed the woman he depended on, waking to find her dead by his own hand would have driven him into madness again. He remembered, too, his original plan, never to engage Swiftwind Swordsman directly, but to stage a confrontation with Noah and use the distraction to spirit Proxima through the teleportation gate and escape. The Mind Stone's onslaught had wiped that plan from his mind in an instant. Now, however, lucidity returned. Without wasting words, Corvus produced a glowing yellow gem, the Mind Stone. It had seemed to vanish when Noah had searched him earlier. In truth, it had merged with Corvus's body as an energy form, which explained why Noah had felt nothing when he probed him. Now Corvus drew it back out and activated it to the fullest extent he could. This time, the stone's power would be used for containment rather than raw offense. Noah braced himself and focused the resolve rune, resisting the gem's intrusion. The bells still rang in his ears, but even Michael's blessing could not completely shut out the Mind Stone. He resolved to summon Orn later and improve his defenses. This close call proved the need. A phantom of the resolve rune appeared in Noah's hand and unleashed a technique he'd been saving: explosion. Though the resolve is a world rune, famed for its life-giving vitality, explosion converts life force into a devastating destructive wave, enough to collapse mountains, the sort of force that could rend the earth itself. The blast washed over the Mind Stone's influence like a decay, sweeping its energy aside and freeing Noah from the stone's control. The surge continued outward until it dissipated. When Noah turned, Corvus was already gone. He had taken Proxima and become a streak of yellow light, slipping clean through the purple teleportation gate. He ran? Noah muttered. Corvus had earlier seemed bent on fighting to the death. Had that all been theater? Even if the light Corvus formed wasn't moving at light speed yet, once in space he could accelerate indefinitely and quickly reach near light speeds, making pursuit nearly impossible. Corvus had re-emerged into their native cosmic expanse and was accelerating away, putting as much distance as he could between himself and the gate. Noah couldn't allow that. His mission wasn't over. The foreign threat might have been repelled, but one of the Infinity Stones, the Mind Stone, had left with Corvus, and Noah had no intention of seeing it carried off. "I'm going through the teleportation gate to chase them," Noah told Lysandra quickly, before entering the universe's realm, so their link wouldn't break. "I'll leave things here to you. I should be back very soon." "Okay, Noah, be careful," she replied. She trusted him. She knew what he could do. Noah smiled briefly. He had the Tesseract and teleportation at his disposal. If the gate closed behind him, he still had ways to return. The Tesseract, hovering behind him, pulsed, and in an instant he collapsed into a mode of light and performed a spatial jump. He emerged into the universe, an immense black canvas scattered with cold, glittering stars. There was no time to admire the view. Noah had already dropped in front of Corvus. The other man streaked toward what he thought was open space, unaware that Noah now blocked his path. Noah sent another burst of rune magic after him. The spell flared brilliantly against the star field, and Corvus at last saw his pursuer. He swerved, avoiding the strike, and Noah's attack struck the drifting wreckage of the Chitauri mothership nearby. Metal and debris tore apart and scattered. In the silence of space, the impact produced no sound, only a dazzling spray of light. Corvus watched Noah with hard eyes. He had not expected such relentless pursuit, but he also knew he could not stand toe-to-toe with Noah now. He altered course again, releasing a final Mind Stone-infused blast to try to hinder his opponent as he fled. Noah, however, wrapped in the Resolve's rune power, shattered that interference and surged on. Two streaks, the green of Noah and the yellow of Corvus, ran through the dark. The green light closed the gap, quickly overtaking the yellow. Noah decided not to delay further. He gathered the world runes full force and prepared to end Corvus once and for all. Chapter 206, Mutation. In the pitch-black vastness of cosmic space, a sudden light flared, dazzling as a star. It was a green light, soft and mysterious, cutting a sharp contrast against the surrounding darkness. The glow seemed alive, warmth and vitality radiated from it, stirring the emptiness around. Distant stars, touched by the green, looked like brilliant emeralds set in the endless night. This surge of life was runic power, released by Noah as he fully activated the Resolve rune. To his surprise, the rune's energy had been growing stronger each time he used it. It felt as if the more he drew on the Resolve rune, the more potent its magic became. Before this, no foe on Earth had forced him to unleash the rune at full strength. After his enlightenment on the Tibetan grasslands, Noah had felt only one step away from mastering the runes. Perhaps now he would finally find the key to that last step. Noah floated in open space. The harsh environment and cosmic radiation did not touch him. With runic magic suffusing his body, he could survive in the universe without protection. He brought his hands together, and the Resolve rune blossomed in his grasp, pouring out endless light. Noah's intent was lethal. He would give Corvus Glaive no chance to flee. He would strike with everything he had. The tesseract shimmered beside him, adding a touch of azure to the green glow. Under such concentrated power, technique meant little. Even Noah's finest swordsmanship would have the same effect as simply pouring it all out. The light flared for an instant, forming a massive energy mass, as large as a star, that surged toward Corvus Glaive. Life force transmuted into destructive energy, and with the Space Stone's power woven into it, the blast teleported almost instantly to Corvus's position. If Corvus had not been bolstered earlier by the Mind Stone, he might never have had time to react. He would have been incinerated by the onslaught. Even now, though, there was little he could do. The attack brought nothing but death and annihilation to his senses. He felt certain he would die beneath it. But Corvus would not go quietly. He still held an Infinity Stone, and he did not believe the Mind Stone would be weaker than his opponent. Corvus had already wrapped himself in the Mind Stone's energy, protecting himself and Proxima Midnight, who stood behind him. He did not intend to counter with an expansive release of power. He simply wanted to block the attack. One of the Infinity Stones should be able to resist this, he thought. The Mind Stone hovered above his palm, emitting a faint yellow light. It slammed into the green destructive beam, and the two forces met in the void. There was no thunderous sound. The destructive light simply melted everything it touched. Scraps of Chitauri ships that drifted nearby vanished the moment they met its glow. Corvus felt an immense impact and dug his heels in, gritting his teeth as he strained to hold the line. For a few seconds he resisted, refusing to be shoved back. Then, gradually, he began to be overwhelmed. Although the Mind Stone was powerful, Corvus could no longer fully unlock its potential. Ever since his self-destructive stunt, his ability to command the stone had been diminished. An oppressive force pressed down on him. His strength ebbed alarmingly fast, the Mind Stone's light dimming under the onslaught. At last, Corvus understood he could not stand against it. He reached out and took Proxima's hand. If they were to die, they would do so together. When the Mind Stone's glow finally faltered, the first thing to take the impact was not Corvus, but the stone itself. The green destructive beam, runic power fused with space stone energy, struck the yellow gem head-on. In Noah's understanding, only the combined might of all 6 Infinity Stones, or the chaos magic of Wanda, could destroy an Infinity Stone. He had never intended to shatter the Mind Stone, and he did not believe his attack should have had that effect. But something unexpected happened. As the energies collided, the Mind Stone began to fluctuate wildly. The destructive light became entangled with that fluctuation, and the fabric of space around them started to ripple. A purple glow began to seep into the area, and Noah felt a sudden chill run through him. "The void?" Noah exclaimed inwardly. From the system's records, he knew what the void was, a peculiar dimensional realm, like the back of the universe, vast, enormous, and normally distant from ordinary space. The void was sensitive to disturbances from powerful energies. In the League of Legends universe, runic power had once disrupted the void's balance. In the Marvel universe, the void dimension should be larger and more stable in theory, but it was not immune. During the battle over New York, earlier collisions between runes and stones had not affected the void because Noah himself had stabilized the void around that area, keeping it calm. Now, however, he had passed through a teleportation gate and arrived in a totally different region. Under the impact of two infinity stones and a world rune colliding, the void's equilibrium finally fractured. Close to the Mind Stone, a rift to the void opened in space. Purple light spilled from it, and the very fabric of the universe began to twist around the anomaly. Chapter 207, Void. In the black expanse of space, the wreckage of countless starships drifted like ghosts. Two figures, one glowing yellow and the other wrapped in shadow, faced each other amid the debris. Beside the yellow figure, a rift was slowly opening. Moments earlier, two infinity stones and a world rune had collided in this cosmic void. The unleashed energies shattered the calm of the void dimension beyond that reach of space. Now the void was responding. Noah stared at the rift with a grim expression. He had no way to predict precisely what the void dimension would do. Back on Earth, the void had never behaved like this. Disturbances were rare, and ordinarily the void could not be perturbed without something truly extraordinary. Noah had long suspected the Infinity Stones might influence the void. When he first tracked the Tesseract, he had studied that possibility. While in the void, he could sense nearby portions of it, roughly the volume surrounding Earth. And within that range, the fluctuations of a single Infinity Stone rarely caused trouble. The Tesseract, even when continually active in Fury's lab, had been manageable. Moreover, the void above New York had been under Noah's control, which made using the World Rune and Tesseract safe there. But here, chasing Corvus Glaive into the universe, Noah had gone beyond his domain. The void in this region was not his to command. When he fully unleashed the World Rune's power, several of the universe's greatest forces converged. A new void gate tore open in the cosmos, spilling an evil violet light. This mutated void energy was unlike anything Noah had seen. Corvus Glaive, standing beside the rift, had closed his eyes, accepting death. But the pain came slowly, and he reopened them in confusion. Before him, space seemed to split. A purplish energy bled out of the tear, had it curious and infantile, as if it had just arrived in this world. Noah's mind stirred, and the Tesseract at his back flared. He intended to seal the rift with the Space Stone first, then deal with Corvus, but the purple tide rushed past before the Space Stone could close the breach. In an instant, the rift's surroundings were submerged, swallowing Corvus Glaive and the unconscious Proxima Midnight behind him. The void spread with terrifying speed, turning a stretch of cosmic space into a sea of pale purple. Noah found himself immersed in that ocean, shielded by a green barrier. He watched warily. This mutated void might affect him. Before it could touch him, he used the Resolve rune to carve the energies apart. A blue flash sparked inside his shield. Noah spread his hands, the Tesseract's force whirling, and he sensed space power flowing in two directions. The void continued its advance, aiming straight for the teleportation gate that linked back to Earth. For a heartbeat, it threatened to spill a deeper purple through the gate and into the sky above New York. Then, just in time, the purple wave was cut off. The teleportation portal snapped shut. The sky calm returned over the city, and those watching cheered. Out in the unknown reaches, the void gate Noah had opened began to recoil under his control. Space Stone power, combined with Noah's mastery of void energies, forced the rift closed and stemmed the purple tide. But even after the tear sealed, the pale ocean had already worked its changes in secret. The purple clung to Corvus like a larva to bone. Where yellow light had once defined him, violet seeped in, wrapping his skin and spreading into his core. A whispering murmured in his ear, a temptation that crept along his nerves and sank into his soul. Corvus fought, summoning the Mind Stone within him, trying to push the invasion back. The purple resisted briefly, then devoured that strand of Mind Stone energy. Once that resistance was gone, the purple spread unhindered. Proxima Midnight, though unconscious, was being eaten away in the same slow fashion. Even the broken hulls of nearby Chitauri motherships shivered under the influence. Wreckage began to fuse, metal and debris knitting together under the void's will. The Mind Stone itself glowed faintly, resisting with what little strength remained. Unlike Corvus's internal energies, that glow could not be fully eroded by the violet force. Corvus Glaive's body began to mutate. The yellow radiance dimmed beneath layers of deep purple. His skin smoothed and hardened into a carapace. Here and there, small, scale-like plates sprouted, catching the light with a sickly sheen. The amber in his eyes darkened to the same purple, and slim tentacles pushed out from the back of his head. They were sheathed in fine scales, violet light pulsing between the plates, each tip ending in a blade. The blades were fragments of his original golden double-edged glaive, converted by the Mind Stone's energy and fused into living, violent flesh by the void. His face flattened, features contorting into something less human. The skin shifted to a pallid lilac, and tendrils sprouted from the edges of his cheeks, weaving into the cluster of appendages along his neck and shoulders. As the void transformed his legs into armored, purple carapace, Corvus ceased to be Corvus in any familiar sense. He had become a void thing, a hulking, Cthulhu-esque monstrosity born of purple light and alien hunger. Chapter 208, Void Corruption. While Noah used the Space Stone to keep void energy from pouring into Earth's atmosphere and to seal the rift, Corvus Glaive was being silently remade by that same void energy into a monstrous, distorted thing. The void creatures Noah remembered best were the few classic void beings: Cho'Gath, the Terror of the Void, Kha'Zix, the Void Reaver, and Vel'Koz, the Eye of the Void. To Noah, they embodied a single impression of the void: twisted, hideous, terrifying, a perverse beauty that drove people mad. When Noah finished securing the teleportation gate and stabilizing the rift, he saw the transformations unfolding at a distance. Something like the first true void creature in the Marvel Universe was being born. The void energy before him felt different from the controlled power Noah wielded. It wasn't pure. It was laced with corruption, malice, and destructive intent. Still, after a moment's observation, Noah lowered his green rune shield and let the tainted energy wash over him. As he expected, it couldn't harm him. He already commanded tremendous void power, and more importantly, the void had sprung from him. He was its destined overlord. The corrupted energy couldn't touch what had been born of him. Noah reached out with his own void, communed with it, and then thrust his hand forward. Pure void power flowed from him and began to purify the corrupted tide. The result was immediate. The surrounding void energy cleansed itself, and Noah absorbed the recovered power. He felt better as the pollution cleared and turned his attention to the mutated figures on the field. Corvus Glaive had already been altered once on Earth, an alien reduced to a yellow, radiant energy form by the Mind Stone. Now void corruption reshaped him again, transforming that energy into something hideous and warped. Tentacles writhed from his back. His features were stretched and alien. Proxima Midnight, who had been behind him, was also touched by the void as the purple sea advanced. She had never been as strong as Corvus after his Mind Stone change, and void corruption did not make her any more formidable. Her skin hardened into smooth chitin, her limbs elongated, fingers sharpened into claws. Purple veined her body. Her hair became slick, sinuous tentacles, and her armor melted into a skin-like covering. Both had changed beyond recognition. But what shocked Noah most was the thing forming behind them. After he had destroyed the Chitauri mothership, its wreckage had been scattered through space, much of it reduced to nothing by Noah's previous light of destruction. Yet now the purple void sea seeped over that debris, and a grotesque mutation began. Metal hulls sprouted clusters of purple tissue that pulsed like flesh. Broken plates stitched themselves back together with thick, writhing tentacles, the discarded parts replaced by living appendages that linked the fragments. The debris reassembled not into the old ship, but into a new, monstrous organism, a void spaceship made of wreckage and living void matter. Its hull was slick with flesh-like tissue, countless tentacles coiled and pulsed across its surface, purple luminescence flowing through them like veins carrying energy. In the ship's center, where separate fragments failed to fuse properly, a great maw yawned. 3 grotesque void entities stood before Noah, and the warped mothership behind them made the spectacle worse. Corvus Glaive, standing at the front, opened his eyes. For a moment, a faint purple glow flared in his gaze, then the pupils snapped back to yellow. It wasn't any recovery from corruption. It was a new effect, an ability born of the Void's absorption of the Mind Stone's power. The Mind Stone's influence now let Corvus exert mind control in a new, Void-augmented way. "I see it," he rasped, the first words since his mutation. His voice was hoarse and fevered. "True power, the truth of the world, boundless, infinite, the true Lord of the Void, the origin and the end." Purple energy licked around him like flames as he raved. "I have been shown the will of the true God. I will bring its will to this universe. Let all living things revel in its glory." He howled, and the Void Mothership answered, a deep, eldritch roar that shook the air. The three of them were clearly ordered in a hierarchy. Corvus, newly empowered and fanatical, dominated. The Void Mothership and Void Proxima Midnight fell into subordinate roles. Proxima now stood behind Corvus with an almost obedient posture. Their old dynamic dissolved. Noah stared at the fanaticism and thought, "Idiot." The Void's corrupting influence was terrifyingly effective, pushing minds into frenzy. Even the Mind Stone couldn't resist it. The Void God Corvus worshipped was likely a hallucination born of madness. If there truly were a god at the root of this corruption, it would be because of Corvus himself and the rift he had torn open. He cursed and raised his hand. He would not hold back now that the Void had mutated so far. A concentrated beam of magic lanced from Noah toward Corvus. Corvus's face twisted in fury, tentacles behind his head whipped wildly. The Mind Stone's power flickered in his eyes, and answering his will, the mutated mothership gaped open and unleashed an enormous purple void ray from its maw to intercept Noah's magic beam. Chapter 209, The Drunkard's Intention is Not to Drink. Boom! Noah's magic beam slammed into the void beam and pushed it back. Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight immediately began to dodge, streaking away from the side of the void mothership. Proxima, now corrupted by the void, could survive in space. Two thrusters erupted from the back of her void-twisted armor, spewing purple void energy that propelled her away from Noah's attack. The void mothership roared then, realizing its assault was failing, poured all remaining power into a last-ditch defense. Countless tentacles coiling along its massive hull began to glow, and an energy shield made of interlocking polyhedra snapped into place before it. Noah's beam cut through a void ray with destructive force and slammed into that shield. Sizzling energies scattered across the vacuum. Having dodged to the side, Corvus and Proxima opened fire on Noah, trying to strike him while he was occupied with the mothership. Corvus's eyes flashed as he unleashed a mental impact, the tentacles behind his head thrashing wildly. The bladed ends swung out, sending a swarm of sharp energy phantoms toward Noah, while his hands fired void rays. Proxima launched a barrage of void missiles beside him. From a distance, the onslaught would have looked like a Starfleet's concentrated firepower, but it was only the combined attacks of two void-corrupted warriors. The mothership's shield held for a moment. This mutated void construct possessed tremendous energy. Though Noah's magic cannon kept shattering sections of the polyhedral barrier, adjacent segments rapidly reformed and filled the gaps. Noah glanced at the incoming barrage without alarm. He simply waved his hand and unleashed a pulse of void energy, an energy screen akin to the Cassidin E ability. Void energy, purer and stronger than his foes, fanned outward and coalesced into a vast purple curtain. Corvus and Proxima's attacks struck it and dissolved like snow under scorching sunlight. Their volleys failed to leave so much as a ripple. Corvus wasn't surprised. Those attacks had never been meant to finish Noah. They were a distraction. The real goal was the Mind Stone, still floating nearby in the void, its usual blue-yellow aura flickering from recent void energy strikes. After their fight, Corvus stealthily extended a tentacle, its color shifting to black to blend into the darkness, and reached to snatch the gem. He had come to a painful conclusion. He couldn't beat the Earthling before him. No matter how much he had grown since arriving on Earth, no matter the power siphoned from the Mind Stone, no matter transforming himself into a being of Mind Stone energy, this swift-winged swordsman seemed always able to crush him. Acceptance had settled in. He would not waste himself in a duel he could not win. Instead, he would seize the Mind Stone and flee. With it, Corvus could accelerate his plan to spread the void across the universe, bend all life to worship it and to him. A dozen meters from the Mind Stone now, tentacles surging with void energy, Corvus smiled with predatory anticipation and opened his claws. He lunged for the yellow gem. Then the world betrayed him. Space slowed, the surroundings stretching away as if the distance to everything had become infinite. Specks of light, the Mind Stone, even his own hand, all elongated, sucked into an endless corridor. "No!" he howled, panic shredding through him. He had felt this before on Earth. It had driven him to despair then, as it did now. The gem glittered within reach, and yet remained maddeningly distant. When Corvus pressed forward, nothing changed. When he tried to snatch it, his grasp only met stretched space. He wasn't being impeded by chance. Noah had seen the attempt. With the resolve rune at full amplification, Noah's power had become staggering, his control over space reinforced. Everything within that domain answered him: teleportation, prohibition, manipulation of distance. Corvus had been caught again in the so close and yet so far field Noah had used before. Noah cut off the ploy, reached out, and with a small, practiced motion shifted the space between his hand and the Mind Stone. When he opened his palm, the yellow gem rested in his grasp, pulsing faintly. "Now I have 2 infinity stones. It won't be long before I can snap my fingers." The tesseract on Noah's back pulsed in response, as if acknowledging the Mind Stone. Corvus's face darkened to a purplish rage. The Mind Stone had been wrested away. Escape routes narrowed around him. He had gambled everything on getting that gem first. Now stranded and stripped of his prize, he stared at Noah with all the fury of a cornered beast. How could he get away from this? Chapter 210. Self-Destruction Boom. The Void Mothership's shields were cracking again and again, each one holding only a few seconds before the magic beam tore through. The massive body's tentacles smoked. Purple light pulsed beneath their skin, feeding the shields. Even after being transformed into a void creature, the mothership still remembered what it had been, a starship. It did not want to be torn to pieces and drift dead through the void. As it fought the ray, a huge maw opened on the mothership's flank, and several void leviathans spilled out, creatures it had just manufactured inside itself. The original Leviathan mothership had been an armory, constantly producing Chitauri soldiers to swell Thanos' forces. That trait had remained after its transformation. Void Leviathans were followed by swarms of smaller void Chitauri, many tentacled, armored, and bristling with savage faces. They charged at Noah to block his assault, but Noah already held the Mind Stone. The Infinity Stones, unshielded, were now in his grasp. A fierce power flowed from the gem, racing through his hand and suffusing his whole body. It was a force that would atomize any ordinary human, but Noah's physique was extraordinary, and he was fully keyed to his resolve rune. He felt the Mind Stone's strength amplify his mental capacity. Holding it, he sensed protections and manipulations of thought, the rudimentary workings of telepathy and mental defense. The deeper capabilities would require time and exploration. In his other hand, his magic beam still streamed, an unceasing torrent that seemed inexhaustible. The void creatures came on, purple and tentacled, and were the first to meet Noah's new attack. But he ceased the beam from his right hand and gathered forces in his palm. Space Stone energy, the Mind Stone's power, the Resolve Rune's green magic, lightning from Static Shiv, and the holy radiance of Guardian Angel. The green Resolve Rune magic mingled with these energies and shredded into a brilliant 7-colored light. The beam that sprang from Noah's palm was beautiful and terrifying. Wherever it passed, space itself began to fray. Layer upon layer of reality cracked open, and terrible space-time turbulence seethed within the rifts. The void spawn that tried to meet it never reached the beam. They were sucked into the shredded space and torn apart by temporal maelstroms. A few improbably lucky ones might have been flung through a wormhole to some other corner of the universe, but most were ripped to pieces. The mothership had barely relaxed when the green beam that had once menaced it was replaced by something far worse. Panic rippled through its bulk. It stopped obeying Corvus Glaive's orders and fled, thrashing tentacles like thrusters as it tried to outrun the 7-colored light. It sped away far faster than its size would suggest, but the beam tracked it relentlessly. Its lock could not be broken. The mothership could not stop. It could only run. From inside the pocket dimension where he was trapped, Corvus Glaive saw the scene and, instead of despair, found a sliver of hope. The pocket had frozen his body and the space around him, but not his mind. The yellow light in his eyes blinked. He still retained the mental acuity the Mind Stone had once gifted him, even though he no longer had the stone itself. His psychic talent flared. He focused not on Noah, but on the fleeing mothership. Corvus's thoughts slipped into the ship's spiritual core. The void mothership, in the midst of its frantic escape, was powerless to resist his intrusion. Corvus did not force it to charge back toward Noah. He simply seized control of its course and swung it away from the beam's line. Noah barely noticed the slight change in direction. He had only recently acquired the Mind Stone and was not yet fluent in the nuances of psychic warfare. Corvus held the mothership's path, eyes glowing. Purple void power coalesced on the surface of his frozen body as he prepared to act. Boom! The seven-colored beam closed on the mothership. Its shields shattered instantly under the assault. The beam pierced toward the giant hull. Before the light could rip the ship apart, the mothership itself flared with a savage purple brilliance and detonated. Chapter 211. Get out of trouble. Escape? Boom! A bloom of sparks threaded with purple energy tore through the sky, exploding into a flame cluster nearly 10 kilometers across. The blast was broad enough to cover most of New York, and its shockwave of energy rippled outward for miles. The massive void mothership suffered catastrophic self-destruction. The void energy that had been concentrated within it fed an even larger conflagration as the ship tore itself apart. Noah's seven-colored beam, the one he'd been using to chase the mothership, pierced the explosion and shot past, but the blast had rent the surrounding space with more than ordinary cracks. Where the beam arrived, those fissures shattered into a yawning spatial hole, a turbulent void seething with chaotic currents. Anything dragged inside would be torn apart. Noah frowned. Even accounting for his attack and the mothership's self-destruction, this shouldn't have produced such a massive spatial breach. Normally, it would have left only scattered cracks. He didn't have time to study the anomaly. Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight were his priority. Then the unexpected. Within the pocket dimension where they'd been imprisoned, Corvus and Proxima had used their own void energy to corrode an opening. The void energy they wielded seemed corrosive to spatial power, perhaps a result of previous exposure, and they escaped. Corvus emerged and headed straight for the site of the mothership's destruction. It turned out the self-destruction had been his plan from the beginning. He'd seized control of the mothership with his mind, ordered it to blow, and directed it to this exact spot because this was a spatial wormhole jump point. In this galaxy, ships must use such wormhole nodes to jump between star systems and planes. Their Chitauri fleet had entered this galaxy through that wormhole. The combined force of the explosion and Noah's seven-colored beam had ripped the wormhole open into an unstable spatial hole. A powerful suction now eddied around it, pulling in the beam, flame, and shards of debris. Corvus and Proxima were streaking toward that breach, intent on using it to escape Noah's pursuit. The suction plus their void-propelled speed made them look like two comets racing for the void. Noah wouldn't let them go. The mission might have been complete, but these two were corrupted by the void. If they were allowed to flee, who knew what havoc they could wreak? After the wormhole tore open, the surrounding space had become turbulent and unreliable. Teleporting blindly now, even with the Tesseract, was too risky. Noah switched to full-speed flight instead. The Tesseract and his own spatial control let him resist the turbulence and push forward at top speed. Corvus and Proxima, for their part, didn't slow either, not because they weren't affected, but because they had no choice. To stop would mean death. Noah's speed was a notch higher than theirs. He activated Ghost Step. His figure blurred, then surged forward. Corvus, ahead and to his front left, was his main target. The Glaive's speed had increased dramatically, far faster than Proxima's, and his body had adapted along the way. Bioorganic propulsors sprouted across him, spewing void energy. The void's influence constantly drove creatures to evolve for survival. Proxima, being weaker before corruption, showed less dramatic change, but her armor had fused into a living void skin reminiscent of Kaisa's shape-shifting hide, an unsettling, organic shield. All their focus was fixed on the whole. Corvus poured out every reserve of power to reach it. In his eyes, the turbulence was a lesser risk than the Earthling behind him. If he could get through, he could escape the galaxy and rebuild his dominion. He no longer had the Mind Stone, but he still had formidable mind powers and would stop at nothing. Whoosh! Noah fired. The first magic shot screamed past Corvus's side, a hair's breadth away. It missed him cleanly. Noah's annoyance was palpable. The nearer they got to the rupture, the wilder the spatial distortions, and trajectories twisted unpredictably. He didn't wait. He pointed his index finger, gathering a second, purer burst of magic at the tip. This one struck true. Half of Corvus Glaive's body and roughly a third of his lower face vaporized under the blast. Pain contorted Corvus's features, but even as half his torso was torn away, he forced himself to keep going. The void's grasp within him flared, yellow light flickered in his eyes, and a single thought pushed above all else: survive. For all his arrogance and cruelty, survival instinct won out. Seeing Corvus wounded, Proxima Midnight launched herself harder, accelerating to intercept Noah. As the second attack landed, she slammed between them, presenting her corrupted armor to shield her companion. Noah's next move would have to reckon with her interference. Chapter 212. When disaster strikes, everyone flees. When faced with a life-or-death crisis, Corvus Glaive once again unleashed his mind control and forced Proxima Midnight to take the blow for him. Once a devoted couple, both had been twisted by the void. Their minds were warped along with their bodies. Corvus was no longer the faithful lieutenant of Thanos, nor did he feel anything like love for his partner. He had only one drive now, to let the void consume this universe so he could become the ultimate void creature. To do that, he had to survive this Earthling's pursuit at all costs. Proxima's eyes went glassy and unfocused, a faint yellow glow revealing Corvus's influence. Though she fought it instinctively, his mental grip was too strong. While flying, her body moved on autopilot to shield him. Her void skin reacted, instinctively shifting into a defensive shape. But Noah's power was beyond what Proxima could withstand. The void skin arced into a shield, but Noah's magic beam shattered it. Void magic offered no resistance to Noah's spell, and the beam punched clean through. Proxima was pierced. Pain contorted her face as residual wild magic tore at her from within, unraveling tissues. The chaotic energy inside her chewed at her body until, at the brink of total destruction, the void's built-in survival response triggered. Like a lizard shedding its tail, the disintegrated lower half of Proxima's body broke away, leaving only a mangled torso. She lost consciousness, and the rift's gravity began to drag her in. Corvus showed no pity. He poured everything he had into escaping the beam's lock, squeezing raw void energy from every part of his body. Tentacles burst from him, and he ripped them open to spray void thrust backward, desperate propulsion toward the spatial rift. Noah tracked him, passing over Proxima's severed upper body and casually igniting it with magical flames to ensure she couldn't recover. Corvus dove into the turbulence first. Noah increased the spell, catching the fleeing villain before he vanished. The beam tore through Corvus just as it had through Proxima, but the void creature reacted the same way, sacrificing his lower half to slip through the rift with his upper torso intact. The torn stump closed off, and he disappeared into the writhing space-time. Noah stared at the churning hole ahead, incredulous. After being corrupted by the void, Corvus and Proxima seemed to have acquired that ravenous adaptability of void creatures, an ability to evolve defenses on the fly. They could develop specific countermeasures to survive whatever threatened them. If Corvus somehow survived this turbulence, he would be a catastrophe waiting to happen, corrupting worlds until the entire universe turned into void. Strange as it sounded, that possibility stirred a grim kind of satisfaction in Noah. It would mean an endless stream of missions. But guilt or glee aside, he needed to know if Corvus was really dead. With the Space Stone's power, the turbulence itself was not a mortal danger to him. He planned to jump into the rift and track the trail of void energy Corvus left behind. First, though, he had to secure a return point. There was still a corrupted pocket of void nearby that he hadn't dealt with. If he chased Corvus through the wormhole and could not return, he wanted a guaranteed way back. Noah scanned the wreckage, and a blue glow appeared in his palm as the Space Stone answered. He gathered debris from the exploded void mothership and compressed it, folding space until the scrap formed a compact metal block. There was no nearby asteroid belt, and the closest planet lay far away. The wreckage was the most convenient base for a reconnaissance beacon. He purified the remnant void energy from the scrap to prevent anything like a void eye from taking root, then set the block down near the corrupted rift. From his backpack, he withdrew a reconnaissance guard, anchored it into the block, and filled its sensor eye with the necessary magic. That done, he turned and slipped into the turbulence. Wrapped in the blue aura of the space stone, the roaring instability could not harm him. As he pushed through, he used the stone to stitch the torn space behind him. The ragged hole contracted and healed until it matched the surrounding universe again. Noah did not leave the rift open. He closed it as he went, preventing further spread. Inside, the landscape was chaos, colorful, turbulent energies everywhere, a kaleidoscope of unstable space that reminded Noah of the Bifrost's wormholes. Unlike fixed jump points, the Bifrost could send you anywhere, but this place was far less structured. The madness made following Corvus difficult, yet Noah's attunement to void emissions let him pick up stray threads of energy. "Found it," he murmured, and streaked after the trace. The scene around him shifted constantly. Every turn through the tumult pitched him into a new corridor of space and spat him out into a different galaxy. In that chaotic medium, the slightest motion carried him through a cascade of wormhole exits, each jump dropping him into another star system as he hunted the fleeing void trail. Chapter 213, New Galaxy, Mission Accomplished. When Noah emerged from the spatial turbulence, he found himself in a different galaxy from the one he'd been in before. In that chaotic eddy of space, he'd only managed to pick up the faintest trace of void energy left by Corvus Glaive, and he'd followed that tenuous trail through the turbulence. The trip had been blindingly fast, less than a second, and he was spat out of a new wormhole into this unfamiliar system. "Where is this?" he muttered, scanning for any void residue around the exit and then sweeping the new galaxy. It was very dark, normal for the universe, but something about it felt wrong. The darkness carried a dead silence. As he narrowed his scan, he found what was off. There was no sun, or rather, there should have been one at the center, but it had been extinguished. Noah turned toward the core, where a blazing star ought to hang. Instead, it looked like a lump of charcoal that had been doused, a star that had been snuffed by an external force rather than dying of old age. A star at the end of its natural life blows up into a bright red giant. This one had simply gone out. He estimated it had only happened in the last decade or two. The planets were still orbiting, suggesting the star hadn't cooled completely yet, but their orbits would soon destabilize and the planets would be flung out, likely to be absorbed by other systems. Noah didn't know whether life had ever existed here, or whether it had been wiped out when the sun died. He also knew this had once been the home galaxy of one of the universe's three great empires, the Kree. Now, the Kree had nearly fallen, their sun darkened, and their homeworld stripped of oxygen and water. He hadn't watched Captain Marvel 2, so he didn't know the full story. But that wasn't his concern. The important thing, Corvus Glaive hadn't disembarked in this galaxy. Wrong place. Noah shrugged. Spatial turbulence like that was impossible to steer precisely. It wasn't a clean, stable jump point like the one behind him. The jump point in the previous galaxy had been broken, and in such chaotic space, even he had trouble finding the right direction. Forget it. Consider him lucky. I hope he brings me some surprises next time. Since he couldn't find Corvus, Noah let it go. His task had been completed. There was no need to chase every stray. Corvus Glaive, corrupted by void energy, was like a bacterium in the vast void dimension. Noah wasn't worried he could cause catastrophic harm. In Noah's estimation, Corvus's void energy didn't grant him the kind of command over the void that Noah himself had. Maybe if Corvus reached the level of a dimensional demon, Dormammu tier, he might pose a real threat, but even Dormammu would struggle. Such a vast new dimension couldn't help but attract the attention of powerful dimensional entities, some wary, some curious. Many could sense the void, but lacked any way to enter, so they remained observers. Noah didn't know about those demons, and they didn't know that he alone could manipulate the void so readily. He simply wasn't concerned about Corvus causing too much trouble, so he wasn't in a hurry to hunt him down. He hoped Corvus might bring him more opportunities later. Speaking of opportunities, Noah figured the void anomaly would spawn a new series of tasks on his task panel. First, he decided he'd collect the rewards for the 2 A-level tasks he'd already completed, then decide when to return to the corrupted void. Clearing that corruption would almost certainly become a task objective. Task: Guard Earth. A-level task: Infinity Stones. As expected, the 2 A-level tasks were completed. He tapped to claim the rewards. Task completed, gained 4,000 essence. Task completed, gained 5,000 essence. Holy cow, A-level rewards really are huge. One of these is almost enough for a 10 pull. After collecting the 2 rewards, his essence climbed into 4 digits, the most he'd ever had. Current essence, 14,800 point. This is enough for 2 10 pulls, and with the bonus chests, I should be able to pull again. Noah did the math. He'd started with 5,800 essence and only needed 2 more C-level tasks for a 10 pull, but the big events had multiplied his gains, turning his planned 10 pull into 20 or even 30 draws. He didn't spend it immediately. Instead, he glanced up at the Void Overlord tasks pinned to the top of his taskbar. Void Series B-level task: Clear the Corrupted Land. Level task: Pests. 2 new tasks had appeared at once. Void Series B-level task: Clear the Corrupted Land. The collision of several powerful forces has shattered the tranquility of the void. Now some areas within the void have fallen into corruption. Summoner, please clear the corrupted land and restore tranquility to the void. The corrupted void will spread over time. Summoner, please purify this corrupted land as soon as possible. Void Series level task: Pests. Due to the void corruption, corrupted void energy has leaked through void rifts, causing evil void creatures to appear in this universe. Summoner, please eliminate these void creatures as soon as possible. Note, it has been detected that void creatures at large can corrupt normal beings into void creatures. The longer void creatures remain, the stronger their forces will become. The task level will increase as the scale of the void creatures grows. After Noah claimed the task reward, he didn't rush to draw the lottery. A lottery needed the right timing, location, and harmony, otherwise bad luck could creep in. He immediately checked the large-scale void task at the top of the list, Void Overlord. This was the big ticket that had appeared after he summoned Kassadin and the void dimension encroached on this universe. It was called a large-scale series because it continuously generated new subtasks as events unfolded. With the current void corruption incident, Noah suspected new tasks would appear, and 2 new entries beneath Void Overlord confirmed his guess. The corrupted land will spread? I'll go see later. Noah read the first task's description. The system gave no instructions for purifying void corruption. He'd have to figure that out himself. It also warned that the corruption would spread. He wondered how fast. He'd already used up his task attempts for the day. Noah had burned his daily attempt on the A-level task to borrow the Infinity Stones. Attempts would only refresh the next day. If the corruption spread slowly enough, he could wait until then, accept the task, and then purify the void. How to do that, though, would depend on what he found on site. He read the second new task. Pests? The title likely meant Corvus Glaive. The objective was plain: eliminate void creatures like Corvus Glaive. Noah's gaze lingered on the task's level label. B. He'd never seen that notation before. The description made the meaning clear. The target could convert others into void creatures, so the longer it remained at large, the larger and stronger its force would become, and the task level could rise accordingly. Noah guessed Corvus Glaive's corrupting power came from the Mind Stone. Once that Mind Stone's power had been assimilated by the void, it likely granted him the ability to pervert others. He glanced at the Mind Stone in his hand. Fortunately, Corvus hadn't snatched it. With the Mind Stone as an accomplice, corrupted energy would have been far more dangerous. Without it, Corvus could only rely on his own talent to corrupt others, and likely couldn't do serious damage in a short time. The appearance of the Pests task meant Corvus Glaive hadn't died in the spatial turbulence. He'd survived somehow. This task was a long-term one. Noah planned to let its level climb and tackle it when it reached around A level. Besides, he couldn't pursue Corvus now even if he wanted to. He had no idea what corner of the universe the foe had fallen into. If he wanted to locate Corvus, he'd likely have to enter the universe later and ask cosmic entities whether any region showed signs of void corruption. The universe was vast. Within the portion observable from Earth, there were hundreds of billions of galaxies like our own. Even if Corvus corrupted several galaxies, it was quite possible no one would notice those events for a long time. Noah wasn't inclined to rush the second task. He was still building his strength on Earth and hadn't prepared to go into interstellar space yet. But after the invasion of New York, he thought it might be time to start planning for a voyage into the cosmos. All right, time to see what's happening with that corrupted void. Having read the 2 new tasks again, Noah closed the panel and decided to return to the galaxy where the corruption had already occurred to inspect the situation. He paused and looked at the extinguished star. He considered leaving a mark to make returning easier later, but there was nothing here he needed. After a moment's thought, he used the space stone to inscribe a faint trace of his energy signature into the surrounding space. He didn't want to waste a control ward, so the mark was minimal. If in the future his teleport ability no longer required a ward as its anchor, he could use these signatures as jump points. A blue pillar of light descended into the dark universe, enveloping Noah, and then he performed a cross-galaxy spatial teleport. In an unknown galaxy, a metal platform hung fixed in space by an anchoring force. Inserted into the platform was a plant-like object with a yellow gem embedded in it, normally invisible to ordinary people. Blue light descended from the sky and bathed the platform as Noah's figure stepped out of the pillar. He had returned to the galaxy where he had fought before. Chapter 215, Corruption. This galaxy had no life. Noah could see only a handful of dead planets scattered across a void far smaller than a normal star system. He stood on a metal platform he had fashioned from the wreckage of a void mothership. This platform floated where the corrupted void clung. From the surface, it looked calm. After Noah had sealed the void rift, the corruption no longer bled into the reality universe. But if it was allowed to keep spreading, the situation could become dangerous. To purge the corruption entirely, he would have to enter the void dimension itself. Before doing that, he took every precaution. First, he slipped the Mind Stone he always kept with him into his system backpack. Ever since he had acquired it, Noah had never put it down. Its power flowed through him constantly. Luckily, it did not disturb him. The Resolve rune's enhancements to his body had made him absurdly resilient. He watched the yellow gem blink out of his palm and appear as a single occupied slot in the backpack. Next, he drew the Canyon Maker from his equipment bar, the staff that opened void rifts. The purple, evil eye at its head turned its pupil with a life of its own. A cool, chitinous sensation ran up into his palm when he gripped the handle. With the staff, he could tear a rift whenever he wished, but he still had to guard against corrupted energy leaking out when he opened it. The tesseract floating beside him pulsed, and a blue circular field unfolded to enclose the metal platform. Over that, the Resolve rune projected a powerful magic shield. Inside those 2 layers, he let the staff feed in a swirl of purple void energy. The third layer, a buffer tuned to resist the exact sort of corruption he was about to breach. 3 layers of protection. He felt confident there was no way corrupt energy could slip through. He focused, tightened his grip on the Canyon Maker, and drew void energy into the evil eye at the staff's tip. A beam of black lightning shot out and struck the space in front of him, carving a rift in the stable fabric of reality. Dark, unstable energy leaked from the opening as it widened, the corrupted void energy seeping back into the void dimension. His defenses did their job. The corrupted surge met a wash of pure void energy, the first line of defense, and the tainted power recoiled. The pure void energy did not bend to corruption. It pushed back and resisted the flow. Noah nodded. He had prepared well. The purity of his countermeasure had lessened the immediate danger far more than he'd expected. Satisfied, he stepped forward and passed through the rift. On the other side, the void dimension greeted him with a mist of purplish-black energy. It hung in a boundless void, composed entirely of corrupted essence and threaded with dangerous-looking black electrical currents. Because the void dimension corresponded to the same coordinates in the reality universe, there was no ground beneath him, only empty space filled with this choking mist. The image was less visceral than he'd imagined. No sticky ground, no writhing tentacles, no egg sacs. If he wanted to find physical terrain, he'd have to cross to the void space that matched a planetary location in reality. Noah hovered and watched the corruption spread. It was insidious, but not frantic. He roughly estimated the contamination front expanded at about 1 meter per second. That rate sounded small, but over time, it was significant. In 24 hours, a boundary expanding at 1 meter per second would increase its radius by tens of thousands of meters, producing a contaminated region measuring many thousands of square kilometers if seen as a circle, and even more terrifying when considered as a three-dimensional sphere. If left unchecked, the corrupted void could consume an area comparable to a small city very quickly, and possibly accelerate once it reached a certain mass. He couldn't let it run its course. He decided he wouldn't try to purify the entire field in one go. The task was too large to finish in a single session, and he didn't want to waste resources. Instead, he would suppress and slow its spread and clear a portion now, then wait for his task counter to reset so he could finish the job later. He tested his method. Flying to the outer edge of the corruption, he established control of the adjacent void space and used void power, tempered by his authority as the void overlord, to reconvert the corrupted energy back into pure void essence. Ordinary void power couldn't do that. The influence of his title and the particular power it granted made the reversal possible. Piece by piece, he pushed back the haze and forced corrupted smoke to collapse into clean energy. The expansion rate of the corrupted mass dropped to a pitiful trickle. With the spread suppressed, Noah felt much more secure. The worst was contained. A little patience would let him finish the rest once the task count refreshed. He hovered amid the purple mist and let the quiet settle around him. He grinned and tapped the side of his head. Why not try my luck with a gacha while I'm here? It's so purple. My luck can't be that bad. Chapter 216, The Void Guide. Party Noah, who had a stubborn faith in metaphysics, decided to spend a 10 pull in the void dimension, hoping for a streak of luck in this strange new realm. He had 4,800 essence points on him, enough for 2 10 pulls, and if the treasure chests yielded anything, he might even afford a third. Here goes. Feels like forever since my last 10 pull, he muttered, rubbing his hands. It was a pity there was no water here. Otherwise, he might have taken a bath and changed clothes for the occasion. He opened the summoning panel and flexed his fingers before pressing the 10 pull button with his index finger. A crisp click sounded, and 6,000 essence points were automatically deducted from his backpack. A blue vortex appeared above the panel, its spiral motion oddly hypnotic. Noah watched it intently as it spun, as if it were pulling him in. One by one, blue orbs rolled out of the rotating vortex and settled on the panel. The orbs contained powerful things from the League of Legends world, but that wasn't what Noah was after, so he did not look away. When the 6th orb finally rested, the 7th shot out, only it didn't land on the panel. It headed straight for Noah's forehead. Noah was no longer the clumsy newbie who would have been caught off guard. He could have dodged, but he knew what an orb like that meant. He watched in silence as it touched his brow and slipped into his mind. A memory unfolded. Under Shurima's blazing sun, special children were sometimes born. One such boy, the only son of an old peddler, found he could glimpse the future. Even with that gift, he was helpless against the illness that struck his parents. After they died, he eked out a living in the slums by selling his prophecies. His visions were uncannily accurate. Customers who were once mud-splattered paupers became men and women with gem-studded slippers. Wealth followed him, and his life grew comfortable. But his own future remained hidden. No matter how many visions he cast, his own destiny was always blurred by something he could not pierce. The more he used his power, the more the world appeared strange and exhausted. He saw the same inequalities again and again, the same bitterness, the same violence born from discontent. Humanity, to his eyes, seemed trapped in a loop of suffering, self-inflicted and inescapable. Even the most hopeful prophecies could not break that pattern. Weary and hollow, He gave up his possessions and wandered, searching for understanding. He meditated in many quiet places until he reached the ruined city of Acathia, its scarred depths a remnant of an ancient war. He stared into the broken earth, and in response, the void answered. If he had been an ordinary person, the tale would have ended there. But his talent was exceptional. Something beneath Icathia whispered to him, and void energy, alien and incomprehensible, filled his mind. When he emerged from the ruins, he was no longer merely human. He had seen into the abyss and the future it held, the end that awaited the world he had once tried to read. For the first time, he understood why his own future had always been obscured. It had been because the abyss had shown him the true future of the world. Determined to hasten the world's approach to that destined end, he chose to become a prophet, to lead people toward that fate. Thus the legend of the prophet spread across Shurima. People whispered that he could split the earth, summon nightmare creatures, and drag deniers into the depths. Those who heeded him would offer themselves as living sacrifices. Rumors gave him a name, Malzahar, either bow to the void or be consumed by it. Noah rubbed his temple as the memory receded. Malzahar, the name, the prophet of the void, fitted the vision. Noah recognized the hero, Malzahar from League of Legends, a mage jokingly called the void's guide. The memory trace stopped after the point when Malzahar opened a rift over Belveth, the tent city in southeastern Shurima. After the void swallowed Belveth, the Void Empress descended, Belveth herself. It seemed Malzahar had a relationship, however tenuous or purposeful, with Belveth. When the memory finished, Noah felt the echo of Malzahar's power in himself. The hero template wasn't overwhelmingly strong. It slightly boosted his void affinity and granted abilities tied to manipulating void energy, the 5 signature skills Malzahar used in the game: Void Shift passive, Call of the Void Q, Void Swarm W, Malefic Visions E, and Nethergrasp R. Beyond those familiar abilities, Noah sensed another, stranger power bleeding through the template. He focused, and a scene sprang up in his mind. 2 rifts yawning in void space, twin gashes opening side by side. Purple void energy surged from both, rushing toward each other until they collided in a violent bloom. Noah blinked and opened his eyes, staring at the hazy purple of the void before him. He felt a tingle at the edge of his perception, as if some kind of sight had been added to his senses. Is this foresight? Chapter 217, New Weapons. Noah had just realized that Malzahar had given him more than skills and void energy. He had also granted him a magical talent, the prophet's gift of foreseeing the future. The image that had just flitted through his mind showed a scene in the void space ahead of him, seemingly a test of Malzahar's abilities. He actually has this, Noah thought, pleasantly surprised. No wonder they call him the prophet. Noah closed his eyes and concentrated again, projecting forward to see what would happen in that space. The future scene returned, but it was different from the first. The previous vision had shown him using Void Call, Q. This time, the purple energy in the void condensed and produced strange little bugs. These void bugs, formed from condensed void energy, floated in the air, waving their 4 legs and thrashing ineffectually, only managing to tumble in midair. The future changed. Noah opened his eyes. He had predicted the same time period twice, but the outcome in the second vision was different. He realized then that his foresight could be used to alter the future he saw. The second prediction had been a deliberate experiment. Knowing he would perform a void call in the first vision, he had instead imagined performing Void Swarm, W, to see if the foreseen scene would change, and it had. The ability felt a little like the power of the Time Stone. Noah recalled Dr. Strange using the Time Stone to observe countless possible futures, iterating millions of times until he found the one that worked. He could do something similar, if less conveniently. If he ever obtained the Time Stone, this talent might be amplified considerably. But the Time Stone was already in the hands of the Ancient One. It wasn't something he could snatch. He pushed the thought away. He had only just acquired 2 Infinity Stones. Chasing a third was premature. Curious, Noah wondered whether the foresight could predict what would appear when he opened the summoned light orbs from his 10 pull. He tried to project forward to the moment he clicked an orb, but the scene he expected was blank. The vision wouldn't reveal the contents. "It seems not," he murmured. Malzahar can't see his own future because the void suppresses it, and these orbs must be protected by the system. He gave up on predicting their contents and began to open them for real. The special effects vortex had faded. 9 light orbs and a treasure chest, rewards from the 10 pull, floated on the panel, waiting. Noah dragged his finger across the 9 orbs and opened them one by one. As each orb dimmed, it revealed the item inside. Health Potion 6, Connaissance Guard, Mana Potions, Skin Shard, Storm Razor, Crimson Crystal. When the Storm Razor orb dispersed, Noah's eyes lit up. He reached toward the Storm Razor icon. As his hand passed into it, he drew out a beautifully crafted katana that thrummed with power. He inspected the blade, drew it from its scabbard, and gave it a light swing. A sharp sword chi released from the edge, slicing through and dispersing the lingering void mist. The katana itself was razor sharp. Even that gentle swing had sent a cutting force outward. The blade was also attuned to storms, granting an extra wind-based effect. Noah turned the weapon over in his hands. It complemented his wind technique perfectly. Using Storm Razor to unleash Wind Sword Chi would boost the attack several ranks. He remembered that because of its appearance and name, many people assumed it belonged to Yasuo, but that was a misconception. There was no proof linking this blade directly to Yasuo. His memory did include the name of Yasuo's weapon, the Unsheathed Blade, which Yasuo liked to call the Wind Blade, but that blade had not been part of his hero template summon. That suggested Yasuo's strength didn't come solely from a favored weapon the way others, like Ez's, might. Noah returned Storm Razor to his system backpack. Between the sword-shaped electrocution blade, magic cut, and this new Storm Razor, he now had 3 powerful bladed weapons. Dual wielding, and even triple wielding, was possible, though he felt no urge to do anything as undignified as holding a weapon in his mouth. He glanced at the rest of the loot. Most of it was unremarkable, though Teemo's mushroom made him wary. It could explode at any moment. Better to take it back to the lab for study than fiddle with it now. With the orbs emptied, Noah turned his attention to the treasure chest, planning to open it and then try his luck with another 10-pull summon while his streak of good fortune held. Since I drew a hero with good luck just now, let's keep it up. I'll open the fragments and the rest later. Noah twirled his fingers and opened the 10-draw summon chest. The chest trembled, then slowly swung open as light spilled out. 2 orbs drifted free, 1 blue, 1 white. White orbs usually meant essence points, so Noah tapped the white one first. You gained 2,000 essence points. Nice, Noah smiled. After finishing 2 tasks, he'd had 14,800 essence. He'd spent 6,000 on a 10-draw, leaving 8,800, and the 2,000 from this chest brought him to 10,800. One more 2,000, and he could do another 10-draw. He turned to the blue orb. You gained Summoner Skill, Healing Spell. Healing Spell? The blue orb revealed a Summoner Skill, and Noah's eyes brightened for a moment, then dimmed when he saw what it was. He tapped the Healing Spell icon. It dissolved into a stream of green life energy and merged into him. He gathered the new power in his palm, vibrant green energy, different from the Resolve rune's power, clearer in color. Noah pressed his hand to his chest and cast the healing spell on himself. A cool sensation spread through him. With no wounds, he couldn't feel any actual healing, but he did notice the acceleration effect, a peculiar force flowing through his limbs, making him feel lighter and quicker. It's fine, but a bit of a waste, doesn't beat the Resolve rune. The healing spell's speed boost was nice, but for raw healing, the Resolve rune was sufficient. All right, prepare for the second 10-draw. Noah refocused on the summon panel and initiated another 10-draw. The familiar vortex returned, and 10 orbs plus a treasure chest appeared. This time, no orb shot toward his forehead. No hero this round. He sighed. I knew drawing in the same place again would hurt my luck. It was more a grumble than despair. Even without a hero, there could still be useful items or skin trials. He opened the orbs one by one and checked the loot. Random hero fragments have 1. A good start. Health potions 1. Useless, only 1 bottle. Random skin trial cards at 1. No way, a skin trial card? Noah hadn't seen one before. He asked the system, if I get a skin for a hero I don't own, can I still use it? Yes, Summoner. Skin trial cards are used like hero trial cards. After use, you temporarily gain the power of that skin or hero, and your form will transform accordingly during the effect. That's a relief. If he'd pulled a cool skin for a hero he didn't have, he'd have been annoyed. Noah tossed the items into his backpack. He continued opening. Reconnaissance guards has 2. Health potion 1. Health potions have 1. Hand of Justice. Steel elixir. Hand of Justice. Mana potion 1. No way. The Hand of Justice? Isn't that from Teamfight Tactics? Noah was surprised. The Hand of Justice was a TFT item. He hadn't expected the system to summon items from a spin-off game. Even more surprising, he'd gotten 2. He picked them up, but they didn't appear as gloves in his hands. Instead, the Hands of Justice merged into his fists and forearms, which began to glow gold. "I thought it was a glove," he muttered, looking at his glowing hands. The effect felt like an enchantment, his arms suddenly much stronger. When he clapped, golden sparks burst into the air. The Hands of Justice increased his physical strength and imbued his punches with power. He also remembered the item's lifesteal trait in TFT and wondered how that would translate in Reality Stone. Maybe something like Grasp of Immortality. This is pretty good. He liked the feel of the golden fists. He tried a light punch and found the golden effect could be concealed, convenient to keep them active without advertising it. Not hiding the glow, Noah used his golden finger to open the remaining chest. You gained 2,000 essence. That one white orb was exactly what he needed. With it, his essence reached the threshold for another 10 draw. He'd gotten 2 Hands of Justice and enough essence, so he was in a good mood despite not pulling a hero this time. After 2 10 draws, Noah decided his next draw would be back on Earth. He couldn't keep insisting on drawing in the same place. Luck changed with location. Time to adapt. By the way, check out Yasuo's new skin, Old Man Yasuo, in League of Legends S14 CG. Chapter 219. This is uncomfortable. First, let's organize these items. Noah put all the summoned items into his system backpack one by one. It was his first time getting an elixir of iron among the loot. The bottle felt metallic, with a glass section in the middle that revealed the blue liquid inside. Drinking it would temporarily increase body size and strength. He decided not to use any potion-type items for now. He'd save them for the lab and hope to mass-produce them later. Okay, now let's open all those fragments. After tidying everything, Noah prepared to open the fragments he'd just acquired. From 2 10-pull summons, he had gained 3 random fragments total, 2 skin fragments and 1 champion fragment. He'd also summoned a trial card, but after thinking it over, he asked the system, "System, if I use a random skin trial card now, will the randomized skin be applied immediately, or will it remain as a trial card?" The system replied, "The summoner can choose how to use random trial cards." Noah brightened at that. If the cards could stay as trial cards after opening, he could decide when to use them. He still had 2 random champion trial cards in his backpack that he hadn't opened. He'd saved them after the system once transformed a random trial into a Tom Kench trial card as beginner welfare when he did his first A-level task. He'd hoped the system might do that again in a pinch, but he didn't want to gamble on luck. If he ran into a powerful enemy later, he preferred to be strong rather than hope for a favorable transformation. All right, open the fragments first, then the trial cards. Noah opened his system backpack and started with the champion fragment. System, obtained champion fragment, Camille, the Steel Shadow. Camille, not much use. The champion fragment could only be used as fusion material. Next, he opened the skin fragments. System, obtained skin fragment, Mecha Atrox. System obtained skin fragment, Hextech Cassidin. No way, Mecha Atrox and a Cassidin skin. Seeing the 2 skins energized Noah. One was a cool mech skin, and the other belonged to a champion he already owned. "These are great," he said, holding the fragments. He was interested in both, and, if possible, wanted to synthesize them. He didn't have the Atrox template, but from his experience after summoning the program Lysandra skin, a complete skin could still grant partial data and power even without the champion. If he synthesized Mecha Atrox, he might get enough data to build it himself. To synthesize a skin fragment, he needed 2 other skin fragments as fusion material to complete the skin. If he wanted to synthesize both of these skins, he'd need at least 4 other skin fragments. Noah checked his backpack. System Backpack, Skin Fragments, Full Metal Garen 1, Braveheart, Tryndamere 1, Misfortune, French Maid 1, Hextech Cassidon 1, Mecha Atrox 1. One fragment short. This is annoying. He felt the frustration. With only 3 other fragments available as materials, he could complete only one of the new skins for now. Should he pick Atrox or Cassidon? Cassidon's Hextech battlesuit wasn't a huge boost to his raw power, but it would open the Hextech battlesuit branch of the tech tree. Useful, since he already had Cassidon's template. Mecha Atrox, on the other hand, was a full-on mech. It wouldn't dramatically increase his strength either, but Noah loved the idea of a Jaeger-like machine. In the end, he chose the mech. He selected the Mecha Atrox fragment in his backpack. The system showed synthesis options. He dragged Mecha Atrox into the synthesis, placed Full Metal Garen and Braveheart Tryndamere into the material slots, then hit synthesize. The 2 material fragments cracked and shattered, turning into beams of light that merged into the Mecha Atrox fragment. System, synthesis successful. Obtain skin, Mecha Atrox. System, since the summoner does not possess Darken Atrox, they cannot obtain all the power or content associated with the Mecha Atrox skin. After synthesis completed, the system delivered what the Mecha Atrox skin could currently provide. A glowing object appeared in front of Noah. He reached out and picked it up. It was a USB drive in a mecha-style casing, engraved with the code Atrox1. That must be the Mecha Atrox data. If he had Atrox's template, the system would have produced a complete Mecha Atrox mech, but since he didn't, the drive would let him build it himself. That actually suited his plans. He wanted to craft it from even better metals. Noah toyed with the drive on his keyboard a few moments, then put it in his backpack to research later. He was ready to open the trial cards next. He looked at the random skin trial card he'd drawn and activated it. System. Obtain skin trial card. 30 minutes. Dark Star Thresh. No way! Chapter 220. Dark Star Thresh. Holy crap! Dark Star? Noah's eyes went wide as he stared at the skin trial card he'd just drawn. The card showed Dark Star Thresh raising his hand to tear open a black hole. Noah hadn't expected a Dark Star skin. Even as a mere trial card, it was a big deal. In the Dark Star universe, nearly every Dark Star was once a galaxy or a planet, corrupted by the Death Omen star until it became a living, devouring world. Dark Star Thresh was the most devoted follower of that star, an acolyte who worshipped the devouring god and swore allegiance to the force that consumed everything until nothing remained. In that setting, Thresh was one of the leaders of the Dark Star faction, guiding other Dark Star champions in their task of devouring existence and opposing the star gods. He wasn't the unquestioned leader, though. Dark Star Queen Lux and Dark Star Sovereign Jin matched, or possibly exceeded, his power. Lux had originally been a star god among the starry faction, but was seduced by the Death Omen shards inside her, becoming Dark Star Queen Lux and suspected of being the star's true host. Jin, once also a star god, came to see the Death Omen star as sublime art and embraced it. He was haughty toward the other Dark Stars. Noah grinned. Dark Star Sovereign Jin was gorgeous, showy, and handsome, and Noah had Jin's template, so he had a soft spot for that form. If he could swap this Thresh card for Sovereign Jin, he'd be thrilled. Still, he wasn't disappointed. With Dark Star Thresh as a trial card, he could walk through this universe with near impunity. There were very few beings stronger than Dark Star Thresh in this reality, and most of those were aloof cosmic entities like the great god Eternity. The moment he summoned that card, Noah felt his confidence surge. The trial only lasted 30 minutes, but 30 minutes was more than enough. That was the biggest gain from this summon, he realized, as he turned the card over in his hands and felt the potent energy coursing from it. If he didn't need to keep a trump card in reserve, he'd want to use it right now and experience that power firsthand. Calm down, Noah told himself, drawing a breath and inhaling the purple mists swirling in the void dimension. His emotions had spiked when he drew Dark Star Thresh, and the void had reacted in kind. Purple vapors surged, and the dimension itself churned. Noah released a steadying bit of magic, soothing the agitated void and bringing the surrounding void dimension under his control, except for the patches that had already been corrupted. Since his Resolve rune had become far more compatible with him, Anomalies in the void dimension had stopped flaring up as they once did. His magic reached out smoothly now, spanning an unusually wide area. Satisfied, he slid the Dark Star Thresh trial card into his backpack. If he kept looking at it, he knew he wouldn't be able to resist activating it. Only 2 hero trial cards remained unopened, and it was time to go home. He'd been worrying about the nascent Celestials on Earth. What if he neutralized them before he was strong enough to face Aurelion the Judge? Now, with the confidence Darkstar Thresh gave him, he felt ready. If Aurelion ever showed up with his 6 eyes in Tribunal, Noah thought he'd try reason first. And if reasoning failed, he'd have to teach a lesson in physics, specifically how black holes are made. The next 2 trial cards revealed themselves shortly after. He obtained 2 more trial cards, Undead Juggernaut Scion and Brand, the Burning Vengeance, each for 2 hours. Scion, a top-lane tank, was a resurgent Noxian warlord raised by the Black Rose into an undead war god, continuing to serve Noxus. Noah regarded Scion as more of a toy. Brand, on the other hand, was useful. Brand's story traced a Freljordian youth who grew bitter and destructive, only to be remade by a World Rune shard into the Burning Vengeance. As a creation of World Rune power, Brand could stand toe-to-toe with a runeless Rise, certainly valuable. "All right, time to go back to Earth," Noah murmured, satisfied. Teleport had been used recently and still needed to cool down, but with the Space Stone inside him, he could teleport at will. Even so, he decided not to teleport directly. He wanted to see whether he could open a teleportation gate to Earth from here. First, he had to exit the void dimension. Noah returned to the iron platform in orbit. Its 3 layers of protection had held firm, keeping any corrupted void energy sealed away. He lifted the tesseract, and as he concentrated, a blue teleportation gate flickered open before him. Oh, it worked. He flew toward it and stepped through. Back on Earth, in Noah's absence, everything seemed in order. He'd only been gone about 10 minutes since chasing Corvus Glaive off the planet. Lysandra was still there, which eased him considerably. Far away, in some remote galaxy of the boundless universe, something else occurred. A purple, fleshy mass was expelled from a spatial wormhole and slammed onto a nearby planet with brutal inertia. A local creature, oddly shaped and curious, approached the fallen object. As it neared, a tentacle shot out from the fleshy mass and pierced the creature's body. The globules split open and swallowed the victim alive. There was a wet, chilling sound of chewing, then a long silence, until a pair of yellow eyes opened on the surface of the mass.